to give you an update on what's going on in 911 and the communication system, and where the Emergency Management Commission is at in all of this. We had a meeting on Tuesday, is that May 14th, 2019, and there we were supposedly going to move forward on the 911 communication system. And we had gone back and looked at some of our meeting minutes from the very first time that Motorola told us about the price of what the system would cost. And it included a lot more than what we were getting now. And the price was $2 million cheaper. So in pointing that out to Motorola, they didn't have an explanation. They just said, this is as good as we can do on our price. And so we asked our Omnicom consultants, the engineers, who we hired to help us through this process, what are our options at this point? And they basically told us that we could accept this deal as it is right now. We could break out what's called civils, which are the tower part of it, and put an RFP out for that. We already have the specs, everything ready to go. We would just need
wrong location.
Just giving an update on what's happening with our communication system. On Tuesday, we had a meeting, and they were pretty firm in what their price was going to be for the communication system. And in going back to December, when we first heard a price from Motorola, it was at $9 million, and we were getting more. And now it's at $11 million, and it feels like it's less. And the less part would be, we're still getting 7 towers, but back in December it was 6 to build, and now it's only 5 to build out. It was at 97% portable, which it still is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that means 12 dB, which means in all of our schools they're able to communicate with the radios, and that's about 80% of our county is what the towers would cover. And the major difference was that back then we had 450 to 500 radios in that $9 million price. Now we're at 213 portables and 63 mobiles. So where the price changed, I don't know. But we wanted them to do better, and at that meeting they said that they were pretty firm on their price.
That was back in December, correct?
Well, the meeting we just had was Tuesday, where they said that their price was firm
At 11 million.
at $11 million.
December was 9.
How do they go from 5 towers to build to 6 at about $1 million a pop, and
Yep.
half the radios, and then the price goes up, I don't know what the percentage is, 24%?
I
in
asked
3
them
months.
and they had no explanation. So, at this point, I did ask Omnicom what we could do, what are our options, and they said accept this deal as is. What the commission decided to do was to give everybody 2 weeks. There was in the public at the meeting were Murphy Tower, who is located here in Warren County, and they build towers. And we asked them if they would come back with some prices for us to take out what they call the civil. And in Motorola, that's a complete package. But if we could separate it out, and the towers are called the civil part, it's all the generators, the shack, that the electronics go in, the tower, all of those types of things are called civils. And right now, other part would be the
And
radios.
that's towers too?
Mhm. That's all of the, hard, fixtures.
And are these state pricing? Isn't that part of the reason why, the prior board went with Motorola on the consoles in the first place, was because we were getting state pricing? Are you telling me that this is state pricing?
No, I can't tell you that. I can only tell you what Motorola has told me.
Cause this sort of feels like gouge
What-
the county pricing.
What I found out was that the 50% discount is when you buy top of the line. That's when you get 50% discount, is when you buy all, am I correct in that understanding?
They're, yeah, their nicest model.
Okay, so, obviously we weren't doing that. Now, there's the separate part of this, which are the radios, the microwave equipment to communicate, and the maintenance portion. That's not included in our price, but that's still negotiable. And Omnicom has said we can do better. So, Omnicom is our consultants. Of course, they said there's 3 options. One is to accept this as is. And I think that will be what the commission's gonna consider at the next meeting, one of these 3 options. Except either Motorola comes back with a better price, and we accept that. Break this out into civils and the radios, the microwave and the maintenance, and do an RFP, and have Motorola compete against Raycom for the radios part. And the other part, we do an RFP and have the towers built, but we're continuing on the process. We're not just letting this go, because we know our system is on its last leg, and we don't have time to wait. So that's one option that could keep this going, or just completely, stop negotiating with, Motorola and just go to RFP for the whole thing between Raycom and Motorola.
What are we in for right now on the consoles? 450?
450,000. And the first payment is due in October. And so, I'm telling you this because I want you to consider the bonding part that we have to, obviously, that's what we need to do. If the second part is an option for us, we would need to at least come up with 4.5 million. That's where Motorola's top price is right now. In talking to Omnicom, they said we could safely go to bond, and we know it's an emergency essential bond. So if we were to do that, the top price they say would be 10 million. They wouldn't go to 11, they'd say you probably won't need the whole 10 million, but that I would be safe in saying that we could bond for that and at least get the towers started, if that is the recommendation that comes to us as a board. And then we could still negotiate with Motorola for the radios, the microwave equipment, and the maintenance agreement. So, does that make sense? Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question for Doug. In your estimate, Doug, why and how did we go from 9 to, and theoretically, I thought it was 9 inclusive of a whole bunch of consoles. At the meeting that I attended quietly, because we didn't wanna have a quorum and violate open meeting laws, so I just sat there and listened. But what I heard was about $9 million, and there was some real pushback from some cities like Norwalk, who said, well, we already have consoles, and we already have a tower. I would prefer to let all the smaller municipalities pay for their own equipment, and then we thought theoretically that might move the number down to 7 or 7.5 or whatever. How are we going from 9 to 11?
In true transparency, the presentation that Motorola gave was prior to them having the full scope of work in their hands from Omnicom, that we had them write up, which was initially gonna be an RFP that went out for competitive bid. And then once the prior board bought those consoles, we were kind of, or once they approved the courthouse bond went through, we were kind of restricted on where we could go because of the time frame, having to move into the temporary facility, and Motorola was our best option at the time. So that kind of sent us down a path prior to us being able to go to an RFP. So then we ended up in a sole source environment. We were still giving them the scope of work, and Omnicom was not completed with that yet. So all of the information that Motorola had was attending the meetings, getting what we were saying we wanted. So they gave us a ballpark figure.
I get
Now
it.
granted,
And I
they
get-
said that was a budgetary number.
I understand.
And how they came back with 11,
I understand.
that I don't know, and that's why we're questioning it.
I understand that too, but that was a ballpark figure with constructing 6 towers and hundreds of radios.
And
now
that-
we're-
and
now
that's
we're
why we
down
have-
$1 million on a tower, and we're half on the radios, and yet the number 9 to 11, darn, what is that? 20, I mean, that's like 20 some percent. I mean, how do they increase it?
I think it's about 13 or 12%.
And that's why we have Omnicom, and we've hired them to review this, and I'm glad that they did. So we have somebody that has the technical
2 on 9 is
expertise.
22%. That's a 22% increase
I would be
Yep.
comfortable
With
with
a-
9.
with a tower less and with half the radios.
Agreed.
And
But-
whether or not they have the full scope of work in that, and the meeting I attended wasn't in January, it was in March maybe, I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I feel like it was March or end of
That was the
February.
first joint meet, yes.
Right.
It was the first joint meeting of all the mayors and
Yes.
the law enforcement, and they were talking 6 towers and a whole bunch of radios at 9, and some people were kibitzing about, well, do we have to pay for radios for smaller towns, shouldn't they pay for their own?
And
Well, now we're at 22% higher with 1 million less in towers and half the radios, and that's where I'm not.
and that's where we're trying to hold, that's why it hasn't progressed further, in that we're asking Motorola to, you need to sharpen your pencil. We're not comfortable with the number you're presenting, and if they don't come back in 2 weeks with a fair price, then the options, the commission will have to explore the options that Crystal presented, as far as we scrap the whole thing and send it all back out to RFP. We break out the civil work and try and see what the local vendor does for the civil work. Cause they're pretty confident that they can get the price a lot more competitive than what it is.
I mean, to be fair, I'm pretty confident that if 3 or 4 people were bidding on it, the price would be tremendously lower than
Wholeheartedly agree, that's,
where we're at.
Motorola told us at the meeting that this was their best price, whether we go to RFP or not. I'm not gonna call their bluff, I'm just telling them that we're not happy with what you're doing, and these are the options that we have available to us. And so,
Yeah, I mean,
Aaron, just so you'll know, we go back 2 years or whatever. I could go see if I could find some notes, but they were talking 9 million with a 50% discount.
yeah.
I mean, just to show you,
the sheriff gave me
I mean, it's a
today-
move. The sad thing is, it's a moving number for these people, and because they're the only players that are at the table, they get to call their number, and we don't really have a lot of choice. And
Well,
I don't
That's
like
why I
it.
wanted to have this meeting, because we need to move this forward, because our system is not at a point where we have time. So, in order to move this forward, if the commission does decide to go to RFP, you know, what are our options for our users and for our director of the 911? So, I'm just trying to let you know that these are before us right now, in case anyone comes up to you asking you what's going on, in case they start, talking. The other thing would be to break it out, and, that would keep the ball rolling. The longest thing that takes the most time is to build the towers. And, so we could start on that as soon as we get the RFPs back. So, right here I have the, proposal that Motorola gave to the state. It has the state pricing in it, and I think it was 2014, and then they finalized that in 2015.
And you get inflation. I get
So,
that things are going to be
I know,
more expensive.
But I'm just letting
in
you know
5
that we were
years.
guaranteed these prices at the top model. So, we have that. I don't know if Motorola is going to be able to come back. My personal opinion is that they have a lot on the line. We are a government agency, we are very transparent, so whatever deal we get is gonna be public. and other counties may use that as a standard for them. So this is a major thing. So I'm just wanting you to have this in front of you because we need to bond to get some capital to either break this out or when we go to RFP, whichever way, when this does come, we're gonna need that. Now, the other stipulation we have facing us, because we have a courthouse and jail bond that we took out, we would not be bank qualified this year because we're taking out more than 10 million. And if the bond passes in November for next year for the roads, again, we'll be over that 10 million mark. So we won't be bank qualified either year
Okay, let me think
unless
of
the
the
bond
timing.
doesn't pass.
We've already got 9.5 million. We're not gonna issue any more. Did we do that last year?
Yes, we did.
So we got a
In
year
November.
in here.
So, do we not need to take it out? I mean, I'm trying to think, we're still in design right now.
Yeah.
We haven't used our 9 million.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not that terribly concerned about being qualified,
I understand,
it's
but I'm
20
just
ba-
letting you know.
It's 20 basis points, and I'm not
Right.
gonna let it, the tail wag the dog on 20 basis points over 20 years.
I just want true transparency to let you know what we have facing us.
I'm just
So-
incredibly disappointed with Motorola at this moment in time,
We all are.
and since we're.
Okay, just so I can
recording,
answer
I'm not gonna say
questions.
what I really think.
What we're saying here is, by the way, Murphy could build the towers.
Well, we,
And right now Murphy, the quote that was given to us was a different tower provider doing them. We have put Murphy in contact with Motorola, they're negotiating, Murphy's trying to get prices, to see what number they can give them underneath the Motorola umbrella, so it's a one contract thing. And if they can get those numbers low enough to get back down to the 9 figure, then we just stay with that way. The other way is to split it completely apart and do it, but I'm confident that the local vendor can get a better price.
Okay, so to break it apart, there's two parts. The two parts are, I've heard 4.5 million. What's that part?
okay, that is where Motorola is with building the towers.
With
5.
building the towers.
5 new towers.
Yes,
Okay, so that's
with 2 existing.
5 towers
communications.
only.
There's 2 already existing.
4.5
towers, which
million.
one at
That'd be,
Hoover.
you gotta count the courthouse too, it'd be the monopole at the courthouse, so it is 6 towers.
Okay.
Because we can't utilize the Norwalk water tower.
Okay, then what's the other part?
Then that would be all the equipment that goes on, the
What do we-
microwaves, the
That's not the
antennas,
civic,
the
civil
cables.
or whatever you.
No, that's not part of the civil.
Right, the
Okay.
civils are just the things that other contractors can.
The
provide.
tower, the shelter, the generator,
That's the civil.
that's the
Right.
civil.
And then
That could be
Motorola-
used for no matter what system we go to, they would be able to utilize that same equipment.
Well, my 2 cents is I'm not, if we could hypothetically say the dollars were not going to change, and so the net amount for bond and for taxpayers was exactly apples to apples the same, based on the increase from 9 to 11 in 2 months, based on the decrease in scope of work that Motorola is pitching, and based on the fact that Motorola is the only player in there, in my estimation, not treating the county the way I would treat a business partner, if all things were considered the same out of a variety of reasons, I would be more than happy if the money was the exact same to go with other providers for the other parts of it, that we can exclude them for the contract, so that maybe down the road, Motorola would treat others slightly differently and maybe learn something from it, so I'm willing to explore other options as well. I also wanna hear from Motorola personally to find out why. That's 22% in 2 months and $1 million less for a tower, and probably another $400,000 or $500,000 less in equipment. That's 1.5 less.
And I'm sure their sales rep would be more than happy to give you a call
Oh,
and
yeah.
give you the sales pitch.
I'm not interested in the pitch at this point. I'm interested in
But he's the one that you got contacted, to explain the numbers, so.
I'll do it when I get back to the office today.
With what we got invested, the 450 or 60 or whatever, is there other competitors out there besides
Yes.
Motorola?
Yes,
There's Raycom.
Okay, but what happens to that 450 or, are we,
the consoles that we bought
yes,
are considered P25 consoles, but essentially, they wouldn't work optimally on a different system.
Is there a secondary market value to them?
For anybody that's
Yeah.
behind the Motorola system, yeah, I mean, yeah, we could,
Are they worth
Oh, okay.
$200,000 to some other county?
Oh, absolutely.
$300,000 to some
100%.
other county? And so my point is, it's not exactly the
are they
same
worth
cost.
450 to some other county?
Perhaps not, but
perhaps not, cause some of that 450 was installation and so forth, the actual equipment is less than that.
but the point stands that it does have some residual value.
Yes,
That
oh, absolutely,
250
it's
to
new enough
300
yet,
range.
and there's enough people throughout the state that are going onto the ISIC system, and
Seems like we've got no choice but to.
I think we have to open it up to find out best pricing and options.
Well,
That'd be
it's
hard.
not our decision, it's the
I
commission's
understand.
decision. However, whatever the commission does, and it comes to us, then we do have the power. So I'm letting you know beforehand, so that we can be prepared.
Gotcha.
I made it clear at the meeting that should they go with the present deal, we as a board would not approve it. I spoke for us, just knowing that I don't think that we would, me knowing all of this information and passing it on to you, I knew that we would not do this, so. And that's all I have for you.
Where's the commission at on,
we're gonna meet again on there's gonna be another joint meeting on the 28th at the court annex. I'd welcome you guys, I mean, it's early enough yet that
We could theoretically
You could
notice of the meeting and then we could.
you could actually participate in it if you wanna do it like we've done it, in previous meetings.
Let's do that, let's let Megan know that we can notice of the meeting and then we can all come for each
what
association.
day is the 28th?
A Tuesday.
It's
Yeah,
a Tuesday, and it's in the evening.
It'll be at 7 o'clock out at the court annex.
Was it 7 or 6?
I'll be there.
6 o'clock is the budget amendment
Okay,
at the west annex.
thank you. Okay,
Cause I think it would help those decision makers to know.
Where you guys stand.
Where we're at, because without the bonding mechanism, it's not happening.
yeah,
Okay.
so, and like I said, I did let the mayors, and the sheriff, who are the other members of the commission, know, but it would be great if we could all be there and have Motorola know that we are solid, there's solidarity on the board in not wanting this to go forward, at the present price.
What's our sales rep's name again?
Brian Flynn.
Well, this was not a bunch of good news today, Crystal.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Well, that's all I have.
Do we need to adjourn?
I think I can just
Yeah,
say that.
enough's enough.
Okay.
So,
You wanna call? McIntyre?
yes,
Peacock?
Yes.
Shelton?
Aye.
Okay.
thank you.